Those of you who are new here, maybe don't know us. My name is Adeline.
And I'm Denise, Mama.
And yes, she is my mother. Okay. So,
A proud one.
anyways, actually, this is a perfect segue into what this episode is all about, actually. And today we have a very special topic of, honestly, I'm just going to let you take it away.
Well, today I just wanted to share with y'all. So I have 2 children, but rewind. I have always desired to have children. If you have heard the other podcast previously, one thing we talked about was, as even a 2-year-old, we play house, have our baby dolls and hold them and cuddle them and pretend feed them and all those kind of things, right? And so I've always desired to have children. Honestly, when I was a middle school, high school, or something, I would always think about it. It's by the time I'm 18 years old, I want to graduate high school, get married, and have kids, like immediately. That's always what I wanted right away. But God had different plans. That was not
Very different.
what was supposed to happen. And so, for me, life goes on, continue on. I was 20. So I go to the doctor and, still didn't get married, but I go to the doctor because I had a lot of female issues. And so they were running tests and see what was going on with different stuff. And I find out that I have something that is rare, but not as rare as I thought it was, but I was devastated. They basically told me that I had 2 wombs and I may never have children, or if I do have kids, I very well might have lots of complications, or it may take me a very long time to get pregnant. And, yada yada, all this negative stuff that doctors have to tell you because they don't know exactly what's to be, or predictions, they can't do it, and, all that fun stuff. So, of course, as a 20-year-old who wants children, that was traumatic hearing that. And so now, okay, what does this mean? And so time goes on. I am away from the Lord, knowing that the Lord is speaking to me even when I was away from Him. I knew that eventually I would have children. I just knew it. It wasn't a doubt, but yet the enemy was using all these negative thoughts and negative stuff the doctors were telling me to make me doubt. Try to put the doubt in me. And so, not long after that diagnosis, I find out, 2 people are trying to, my sister and her husband, as well as another family member, Sarah and Scott, were trying to get me to go to a certain, what's it called? Church service. And I was like running, saying, absolutely not. I do not want to go. First of all, it was at a church that I always heard that crazy people were at. And second of all, I don't want to turn to the Lord. I wasn't ready for all that. I know that sounds insane, and it was so stupid on my part looking back.
But praise God for the crazy people in church, because they're the ones who need it most.
Yeah, you're right. And so I was saying all that because I literally went to somebody else's house to make sure, because my sister was coming to get me because she knew what the Lord was trying to do in my life. And she tried to come get me. She tried to call me, text. No, we didn't even have phones then. She tried to page me on my beeper to track me down to figure out where I was to come pick me up. I didn't respond. She kept on and on and on. So I finally called her back and she was like, where are you? I'm coming to get you. I'm like, nope. Anyway, I go home, and after I knew the church service had already started. So I go home, so she couldn't track me down. She couldn't come try and pick me because she was determined to get me to go. And I go pick up some food. I go home, sit down, start eating. Took a couple bites, and all of a sudden, it was almost like Adeline would be on this side of me, sitting down. Like, I literally could feel the presence of someone sitting there, but no one was there. And I hear a voice saying, "Get up and go. Choose now." I'm like, "What? Choose what?" He said, "Choose now. Choose either him or the world." And I was like, "What?" And I knew in my heart that that meant choose my ex or the Lord. There was no more figuring out what I was going to do. Me making my own choice of how things are going to work if I'm asking for all these things. Stop trying to make a deal on every situation I was in with the Lord, because it was always like, let's make a deal, Lord. If you stop this from happening, stop me from, getting in this situation, then I'll turn to you, or. And so he finally said, enough's enough.
Kept negotiating.
I too love to negotiate. But yeah, it was a constant. I knew at that moment I had to get up and go. Of course, right when I walk in the church, my sister and brother-in-law, Leigh and Jamie, see me, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's here." So that was a night of transition for me, and rededicated my life to the Lord after 6 years of being away and doing things my own way, which my own way was not a good way. I learned a lot of mistakes that I made. I learned from them. Thank the Lord I've learned, and didn't have to continue around that mountain over and over again. And so that night, walking away, my unique transition of life-changing experience, and saying, "Okay, Lord, I got to move on." And so by doing that, saying all that, because that was a piece of my story that's connected to this. So fast forward, I am going to the same church that these people were telling were crazy people that would run around the church supposedly and all this stuff, that I ended up going to that night. Well, that's the church I ended up continuing to go to, because it wasn't crazy people. We're all crazy, like Addie said. We all can be crazy, but it was a church that was filled with life and just abundance of joy. And so that was what was experienced there. And so that, not long after I started going for a while, I get into an internship. Being in an internship doesn't mean that you're any more special. I'm just saying this was the position that I was in and where I was. So the people that I was in that circle with, we had a guest speaker. And so he said, he was praying for people, and he said, "There's someone here who's having a situation going on with their female organs." And so all the people that were in that circle with me, is why I was saying that, they all looked back at me or turned towards me and were like, "Go." And I'm like, "No." And they said, "Go." And I refused. I kept saying no, no, no to all of them. And one of them said, "If you don't get up and go, I'm going to bring you." And so I knew.
Get yourself in a community that does that for you.
Yes. So
they are so much believing that the Lord is going to do a miracle, and they have such big faith that they will drag you to the altar. Just like the paralyzed man in the Bible. He had his friends literally carried him on a mat for who knows how long. To the point of having to, there was no room to get inside the house where Jesus was teaching. And so they literally tore off the roof to bring their friend to Jesus.
That's wild.
That is big faith.
Yeah, that is. That's awesome.
It's so important to have a community that will, like she said, drag you to the altar if she wouldn't have gone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. The community is so huge. Of course, at that point, like I knew deep inside that I needed to go from the moment he said that, but I was terrified. I was fearful, and I was also feeling all these feelings of um, it's not going to happen for me. If I go up to be prayed for, what's going to happen? I won't be healed. But um,
Lies from the enemy.
there ended up being evangelist. He was praying for it with me, and all of a sudden, there ended up being so many women surrounding me praying with him. And next thing I know, there's like one by one walks away. And they felt like, okay, I'm released from praying with her. You know, let her be alone with the Lord or whoever else needs to pray with her, so on. And so by this point, I was laying on the ground, just really in awe of what was taking place in the presence of God. And all of a sudden, the hand that was on my stomach, like around this part where the womb is and all that stuff, the female organs, there was a hand that had been there the whole time that they were praying with me. And my eyes were closed. I didn't open my eyes for a lot of the time, just praying and just trying to just embrace those moments. So I kept thinking somebody was still there praying. I kept thinking, I don't want to interrupt the prayer. And then finally I opened up my eyes because I'm like, man, they're going on. They're serious prayer warriors. And so I opened up my eyes and no one was there. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's the hand of God. I had never felt the hand of God, the healing power in my life before. And so it was like the hottest but most gentle warmth that I'd ever felt where the hand was. And I knew I was healed. Whatever you just know. To absorb that realization of what was really happening, even in the disbelief of the belief, God can still move when it's His plan. And I finally got up and ended up going, we were about to leave or whatever later, and I felt like I needed to go talk to this lady, which I didn't really know her. And so I just went talk to her, and I went talk to a couple of the ladies that were praying with me, because I could just, when they were praying, I could hear their voices, so I knew who they were. But this other lady I went talk to, I really didn't know, and she had told me that she was praying with me, and the Lord had told her, she said, I don't know what this means. All I kept hearing over and over again is double portion for shame. And I said, double portion for what? For shame? Or for shame? I already can't talk half the time myself, so I wasn't exactly sure what she was saying.
That Cajun accent coming out.
Yeah, I was in Cajun land at that time, so she had some deep Cajun roots in her slang. And she was like, no, double portion for shame. And she was like, you're shameful of something, and God's giving you a double portion for that. And instantly I knew. And I said, I was just healed. I could feel the heat of God healing my body. And recently I found out that I have 2 wombs. And the doctor said that I would have tons of complications. I may never have children. And if I do, it can be very difficult. And, yada, yada. I said, and I'm believing for at least 2 kids. And she was like, oh my gosh. So there's a double portion for shame. There you go. That's your double portion, your 2 kids. And so with that, I was also like, okay, double portion for shame because there's 2 wombs. You're shameful. Like, I was so shameful of it because I felt like a freak. And why would this take place in my body? Who would ever want somebody that has this? What does this really mean? And so I learned later that it's really nothing to be ashamed of, but I had to overcome that myself. No one could do that for me. And that night, that was revealed to me is I have a double portion for shame.
Mm-hmm. And now you have 2 kids.
I know. And so with that, for years, I held on to double portion for shame. I have 2 kids. So it'd be like, I'm okay with having 1 pregnancy. I could have twins. Let me just have twins. And then that way I have 2. And but God saw different again. Of course, my plans are usually not what's best. And so
We can amen to that, though. Our plans, God's plans are so much better.
yes, they are. And so there was all the years leading up to that, and I didn't meet Ian, my husband. I didn't meet him until a few years after that happened. I would literally visualize my children walking with me, doing things with me, just holding on to that. And no matter what people would say, that I didn't let that discouragement of what people would think about what's supposed to be in my life vanish, because I always knew and believed that I will have 2 kids, because that was spoken over me, and the Lord revealed that I have a double portion for shame. I have 2 wombs, and God was going to do something big with me having kids. Like, how was it going to look? I had no idea. So Ian came in the picture a few years later, and Adeline, you were born 2 years after we got married. So, I mean, not even long after, we were like, okay, let's try and have a baby, because I'm thinking, the doctor said it might take a while. No, I got pregnant pretty soon after. And so it was like, Adeline, it was a miracle baby. And then it was her, my beauty. She was our miracle baby. And before that, it was always like I just remember this recently. I was telling Adeline and Jonah both that I even went to the store one time with a couple family members and picked up some floaties, some arm floaties. And I got 2 pair because I was expecting, because whenever you expect, you act on that, right? Because you're expecting and you're believing and wanting and desiring and knowing what God had showed for a piece of the future, but not fully seeing the full picture. But I knew a piece of it, which was 2, the double. And so I bought those floaties, those little arm floaties. I bought 2 sets. And I'm not saying who was with me at the store, because I don't want them to be like, really? They said, Denise, you might have, those floaties might dry rot before you have kids. And I said, what? Absolutely not. Don't you speak that over me. I will have children. And no, they will wear the floaties. So I was just preparing, expecting, purchasing things. I ended up having a right womb, left womb, of course. If you do have any questions about this and really want to look more into it, you're welcome to do your own research, but there's different types. And if you have further questions, I'm happy to discuss that separately. Anyway, that being said, got pregnant for Addie, had a great pregnancy. We prayed over her the entire pregnancy, prayed over her, the birth, the whole 9 yards of her having all her limbs and intelligence and like all these things. And Ian would pray over her constantly, and of course I would too. And ended up having a section because the doctor didn't want me to have complications in delivery, which I was fine with. Did that, and our beauty came to join us, and she was in my right womb. And the doctor actually said, when he was delivering her during the section, he said, "Tell me which side again she's on." I said, "What?" He said, "I'm just joking. I know she's on the right." But it was just
to test you to see if you were awake.
Yeah. And so it was a moment of, seriously, I hope he's cutting into the right womb. But the way that the womb was is the prominent one, or the dominant, it takes over the whole space of where the wombs would be, because my womb, instead of having a full one, was split in 2. And so it just took over, and it was fine the whole pregnancy. And then when I got pregnant for Jonah, he actually was in my left womb. So I think it's funny because even now today, if I cook something or if I'm separating their food, if bagel pizzas or fixing turkey sandwiches or whatever, if we're going somewhere to the beach or whatever, I always say Addie's is on the right, Jonas is on the left, because it's like easy to remember because they've always been on the right and left.
Like our whole lives, everything. When we used to go to school, like our lunch boxes, mom's on the right, his on the left. Just a known thing in our household.
That's the story. Sticking to it. Because that is how God works. And so now I have Ian and I, along with the Lord, have two amazing children that we're beyond blessed with. And it all stemmed from knowing and trusting that God can heal. Even when I couldn't believe he could heal me. I knew he could heal other people. But, yeah.
It reminds me of the story in the Bible of like Abraham and Sarah. How God had told them like they were going to have a child, but they were like, you're funny, God. Like, we are old. Like, they were very, very old, past childbearing, like, stage or whatever you want to call it. And so,
well, I wasn't that old.
No, I'm not saying that.
I know.
I'm saying, like, God told them the promise, but he didn't tell them the path to get to the promise. And for them, so they tried to make it happen on their own. They were like, okay, well, where's the promise, God? We don't see it coming to fruition. We don't see anything happening. And so they went and had a child by their servant. So, like, obviously the child still ended up being born, but that was not the promise that God had given them. Even after they doubted God's plan and they tried to make it happen in their own strength, God still was faithful to what he told them he was going to do. No matter how much we could mess up and no matter how many times we could go off on our own track, like, God's plan is the one that will prevail in the end, no matter what. We can learn from that and learn from your testimony as well with this, that faith, although it can be hard, God only needs a mustard seed. It's the mustard seed that can grow into this beautiful plant, right? And if we can just have, like, some faith that God will make it happen. Like Isaiah 60:22 says, I, the Lord, will make it happen at the right time. And so if we can just stay, like, hold on to that hope, right? That God will fulfill his promises, even though everything can go terribly on the path to get to the promise, then it will all be okay and it will come to pass.
And wasn't as old as Sarah, thank God. That was around when I was 20 and I was 30 when I had you. So that was 10 years later. I never really thought about it like that.
Waiting 10 years for something that seems like a long time.
It did. And those little floaties, whenever they said about being dry rotted, I was like rejecting what they were saying, but then it was like...
She's like, I rebuke that in the name of Jesus.
But then how, instantly it was like, well, how long will it be?
And it came to pass. You're on the other side of it. What advice would you give someone who's in that position of maybe God's promised them that they're going to have a child, or maybe he even hasn't and maybe they're just waiting to see what's going to happen? Like, what would you say to that?
I would say every circumstance looks different. So be open to the different ways of having that child or those children. Even with healing, there's different types of healing. There's different types of transitions that we have in life. And so I even told the Lord, had those conversations of, even if it is adoption that I need to do, even though you've healed my body, what does it look like for me? But he planned it for me to be able to have 2 children out of my own womb because he healed, and he wanted to show people on this earth, including myself, that he is capable.
Hebrews 11:1, faith is the reality of what is hoped for and the proof of what is not yet seen.
That's right. That's right.
And where there is hope, there's faith, and where there is faith is where miracles happen.
Yeah, hold on to your miracle. I have a miracle baby. I end up having 2. if God has showed you something specific, do not let anyone turn that away. Continue to rebuke what they're saying because they don't realize what it's doing to you, but the enemy knows exactly what he's doing. And he is trying to do everything to turn you away from the Lord by allowing these people to speak negativity in your life that can pull you down. But you have control over that. You have control over your thoughts, and you have to hold them captive on a daily basis if that's what's necessary.
Yeah. So it's that 2 Corinthians 10. We have the authority to break strongholds and to take every thought captive and to submit it to obey Christ.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I had to do that on a regular basis with that over that 10-year period. It was a constant battle of fighting off what the enemy was trying to torture me with in my mind. But I knew what was to be. So just have faith, hope, believe, continue to break those strongholds of despair and fear. As fear is only what?
False evidence appearing real.
Yes. So, yeah, you heard that right. False evidence appearing real. That's like if you spell out fear, that's what it stands for in that way, because the enemy is going to put every possible fear in you if we allow him. So, hold on strong, continue to pray, and you got this.
God will make it happen at the right time.
Yeah. His timing is perfect.
Well, this is a good episode. So, thanks for sharing.
Yep, you're welcome. I think it's good because I'm just so honored to be Adeline and Jonah's mom. Like, it's a blessing.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next episode.
Yep. Bye. See y'all later.